The dust kicked up by 20 horses created a thick cloud that hung in the evening air like a warning. Sarah Mitchell stood on the wooden porch of her general store, watching the riders approach the small town of Cedar Ridge, her fingers gripped, the railing so tight her knuckles turned white. She had seen angry men before, but never this many, and never with such hatred burning in their eyes. The leader of the group was Jake Morrison, cattle rancher who owned most of the land around the town. His face was red from riding hard, and his voice carried across the main street like thunder. Dah. Behind him rode his sons, his ranch hands, and several other townsmen. They all carried rifles, and their faces showed they meant business. Sarah's heart began to race when she saw what they were dragging behind Morrison's horse. A young Native American boy, maybe 16 years old, stumbled along connected to the saddle by a thick rope around his wrists. His clothes were torn, his face was bloody, and he could barely keep up with the horses. Every few steps, he would fall to his knees in the dirt. Only to be dragged forward again, the riders stopped right in front of the general store where Sarah stood. Morrison looked up at her with cold eyes that held no mercy. Sarah had known Jake Morrison for 5 years, ever since she had come to Cedar Ridge after her husband died in the war. He had always been polite to her, even friendly. But the man looking at her now was someone completely different. "Evening, Mrs. Mitchell Morrison," said, tipping his hat in a mocking way. "We caught ourselves a horse thief. Found him trying to steal one of my best mares. You know what we do to horse thieves around here?" Sarah looked down at the boy. He was breathing hard and trying to stand up straight despite his injuries. When their eyes met, she saw something that surprised her. Instead of fear or anger, she saw dignity. This young man was not begging for mercy or trying to make excuses. He was facing whatever was coming with his head held high. "What proof do you have?" Sarah asked, her voice steady despite the fear growing in her chest. She stepped down from the porch, moving closer to the group of men. "Did anyone actually see him steal anything?" Morrison's laugh was harsh and bitter. "Proof? We found him. Near my horses in the middle of the night. It's proof enough for me. Indians are all thieves anyway. Everyone knows that." Several of the men nodded and muttered their agreement. Sarah noticed that most of the townspeople had come out of their houses and shops to watch what was happening, looked uncomfortable, but none of them spoke up. They all knew Morrison had power in this town, and nobody wanted to make him angry. "That's not proof," Sarah said louder, so everyone could hear her. "Being near horses doesn't make someone a thief. Maybe he was lost. Or maybe he was just passing through. You can't hang a person based on suspicion." The boy looked at her with surprise. It was clear he had not expected anyone to defend him. Morrison's face grew even redder, and his hand moved to the gun on his hip. "Are you calling me a liar, Mrs. Mitchell?" Morrison's voice was dangerous now. "This boy is a savage, just like all his kind. They don't belong in civilized society. We're going to make an example of him, so others will know to stay away from our town." Sarah felt the fear trying to take control of her, but she pushed it down. She thought about her own son, who had died. A fever 2 years ago, he would have been about the same age as this native boy. She thought about how she would have wanted someone to stand up for her child if he had been in trouble. "I'm not calling you a liar," Sarah said carefully, "but I am saying that justice requires proof, not assumptions. This boy deserves a fair trial, not a lynching." The word lynching hung in the air like a curse. Everyone knew what Morrison and his men were planning to do, but nobody had said it out loud until now. Some of the townspeople shifted uncomfortably, and a few women pulled their children closer. Morrison climbed down from his horse and walked toward Sarah. He was a big man, much taller than her, and he used his size to try to intimidate her. Sarah had faced worse things than angry men. She had buried a husband and a child, survived winters with almost no food, and built a business from nothing. She was not easily scared. "This is none of your concern, woman," Morrison growled. "But go back inside your store and let men handle men's business." "This became my concern the moment you brought that boy into my town and started talking about murder," Sarah replied. "And last I checked, this was everyone's town, not just yours." The crowd murmured at her words. Morrison owned a lot of land and employed many people, but he did not own the town itself. Sarah's words reminded everyone that they all had rights, In voices, Morrison's hand moved closer to his gun. You're interfering with justice, Mrs. Mitchell? That could be seen as helping a criminal. People might start to wonder where your loyalties lie. The threat was clear, but Sarah did not back down. My loyalties lie with doing what's right. And what's right is giving this boy a chance to defend himself before you condemn him. The native boy was watching this exchange with growing amazement. He'd probably never seen a white woman stand up to white men on behalf of someone like him. His dark eyes moved from Sarah to Morrison and back again, as if he was trying to understand what was happening. Morrison stepped even closer to Sarah, close enough that she could smell the whiskey on his breath and the sweat on his clothes. You're making a big mistake, woman. This boy is going to hang tonight, and anybody who tries to stop us will regret it. I suggest you go inside and forget you saw anything. Sarah looked past Morrison to the crowd of townspeople. She saw fear in their faces, but also uncertainty. Many of them were good people who believed in fairness, but they were afraid to speak up against Morrison's power and influence. No, Sarah said simply. I won't forget, and I won't go inside, if you want. To hurt this boy, you'll have to go through me first. The crowd gasped at her words. Even the boy's eyes widened with shock. Morrison's hand froze on his gun handle. Nobody in Cedar Ridge had ever challenged him so directly, especially not a woman. The crowd held their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Sarah could feel her heart pounding, but she kept her face calm and determined. You don't know what you're doing, Morrison said through gritted teeth. This boy is dangerous. His people have been raiding ranches and killing settlers. You can't let him go free to warn his tribe about our defenses. Sarah looked at the native boy again. He was young, thin, and clearly exhausted from whatever had happened to him. His clothes were simple buckskin, and he carried no weapons. Everything about him suggested he was alone and probably lost, not part of any raiding party. He's just a child, Sarah said firmly. Look at him. Does he look like a dangerous warrior to you? He's scared and hurt, and you want to kill him based on your fears about other people. The boy seemed to understand some English because he nodded slightly when Sarah called him a child. He spoke for the first time, his voice quiet but clear. I was not stealing horses. I was looking for water for my horse. She is sick. Morrison spun around to face the boy. Nobody asked you to speak, savage? He raised his hand as if to strike the young man, but Sarah stepped between them. Don't you dare, she said, her voice like steel. He has a right to defend himself. Let him speak. The crowd was growing larger as more townspeople came to see what was happening. Sarah noticed that several women had joined the group, including Martha Williams, who ran the boarding house, and Eleanor Price, the schoolteacher. These women knew Sarah well and respected her judgment. The boy continued speaking, his English broken but understandable. My horse got sick 2 days ago. I have been looking for clean water to help her. I saw the water trough near your horses, but I did not touch any horse. I only took water. Lies, Morrison snarled. All Indians are liars. You can't trust anything they say. But Sarah was listening carefully to the boy's words. His story made sense. A sick horse would need clean water, and the town's water trough would be the cleanest source for miles around. She had seen many travelers stop there for the same reason. Your name? Sarah asked the boy gently. He looked surprised that she cared about his name. I am called Running Wolf. My people live in the mountains to the east. Running Wolf, Sarah repeated, making sure everyone heard her use his name. By using his name instead of just calling him boy or savage, she was treating him like a human being with dignity. Where is your sick horse now? She is hidden in the rocks near the creek. I did not want your people to see her and think I was bringing sickness to your animals. This answer impressed Sarah even more. If Running Wolf had really been planning to steal horses, he would not have hidden his own horse so far away. A horse thief would keep his mount close for a quick escape. Morrison was growing more frustrated with every word. This is all nonsense. Why are we standing here listening to Indian fairy tales? The boy was trespassing on my land, and that's enough reason to hang him. Trespassing is not a hanging offense, said a new voice from the crowd. Everyone turned to see Dr. Harrison. Pushing through the group, he was an elderly man who had been the town's doctor for 15 years, and everyone respected his wisdom. Dr. Harrison is right, Sarah said gratefully. Even if Running Wolf was trespassing, which he denies, that would be a matter for the sheriff and a judge, not a lynch mob. "Where is Sheriff Collins anyway?" asked Martha Williams. "Shouldn't he be handling this instead of letting vigilantes take over?" Morrison's face grew even redder. "Sheriff Collins is out of town, as you all well know. He won't be back for 3 days. Are we supposed to let this savage run free until then? He could escape and bring his whole tribe back to attack us?" Sarah could see that some people in the crowd were being swayed by Morrison's fear-mongering. The frontier was a dangerous place, and attacks by hostile native tribes did happen. But she had spent enough time around different people to know that not all Native Americans were hostile, just like not all white settlers were good people. "If you're worried about Running Wolf escaping, then we can keep him in the jail until Sheriff Collins returns," Sarah suggested. "That way he'll be secure, but he'll also be safe from anyone who might want to hurt him." Running Wolf looked at Sarah with something close to amazement. He clearly had not expected any white person to suggest protecting him rather than punishing him. His dark eyes showed gratitude mixed with disbelief. But Morrison was not interested in compromise. "I'm not wasting 3 days feeding and guarding this thief. We'll settle this tonight and be done with it." He turned to his men. "Get the rope. We'll use the big oak tree on the edge of town. It'll serve as a warning to any other Indians who think about coming around here." Several of the men dismounted and began preparing a hanging rope. The crowd stirred uneasily. Watching a lynching was very different from just talking about one. Many of the townspeople looked uncomfortable, but they still did not speak up. Sarah knew she had to act quickly. Once the rope was ready, it would be much harder to stop what was about to happen. She stepped closer to Running Wolf and positioned herself between him and Morrison's men. "I said you'll have to go through me first, and I meant it," she declared. "I'm not moving, and I'm not letting you hang an innocent person." Eleanor Price, the schoolteacher, suddenly stepped forward to stand beside Sarah. "She's right. This is wrong, and we all know it." Martha Williams joined them, then Dr. Harrison. One by one, other townspeople began to move forward, forming a protective circle around Running Wolf and Sarah. Not everyone joined them, but enough people stood up that Morrison's men hesitated. Morrison looked around at the faces surrounding him. Some showed determination, others showed fear, but all of them showed that the town was not united behind him. His plan to quickly lynch Running Wolf was falling apart. "You're all making a terrible mistake," Morrison warned. "When this savage's tribe comes to raid your homes and kill your families, remember that you chose to protect him instead of your own people." But Sarah could see doubt creeping into the faces of some of Morrison's own men. They had signed up to catch a horse thief, not to fight against their own neighbors. The situation was becoming more complicated than they had expected. Running Wolf spoke again, his voice stronger now. "I give you my word. If you let me go to help my horse, I will return in 3 days to speak with your sheriff. I will not bring harm to your people." Morrison laughed bitterly. The word of a savage means nothing. But Sarah believed Running Wolf. Something in his eyes and his manner convinced her that he was telling the truth. "I believe him," she said loudly, "and I'll take responsibility for making sure he returns." Morrison stared at Sarah as if she had lost her mind. "You'll take responsibility? What does that even mean? If he doesn't come back, what then? Will you take his place at the end of a rope?" The crowd gasped at Morrison's words. "Ow!" Men looked uncomfortable with the suggestion that they might hang a woman, but Sarah did not back down from the challenge. "If Running Wolf doesn't return in 3 days as he promised, then I'll accept whatever punishment you think is fair," she said steadily. "But he will return. I know he will." Running Wolf looked at Sarah with complete shock. No one had ever put their life on the line for him before, especially not a white woman he had just met. His eyes filled with an emotion that transcended the barriers of race and culture. Here was someone willing to trust him when his own life hung in the balance. Dr. Harrison stepped closer to Sarah. "Mrs. Mitchell, you don't need to make such a dangerous promise. There are other ways to handle this." But Sarah shook her head. "No, doctor. Sometimes you have to take a stand for what's right, even when it's risky. I believe Running Wolf is telling the truth, and I'm willing to bet my life on it." Martha Williams grabbed Sarah's arm. Sarah, think about what you're saying. You barely know this boy. Why would you risk everything for a stranger? Sarah looked around at all the faces watching her. Some showed admiration, others showed concern, and a few showed anger. She thought about her answer carefully before speaking. Because somebody has. Two, she said simply. Because if we don't stand up for what's right when it's hard, then we don't really believe in it at all. And because I see something in this young man that tells me he's worth the risk. Running Wolf's voice was thick with emotion when he spoke. White woman, you do not know me or my people. Why do you do this? Sarah turned to face him directly. Because you're just a person, like me. Because you deserve a chance to prove your innocence. And because I think you have good heart. The simple honesty of her words seemed to affect everyone present. Even some of Morrison's men were shifting uncomfortably, no longer certain they were doing the right thing. Morrison sensed that support for the lynching was slipping away. He decided to try a different approach.
Fine, if you want to play games.
With this savage's life, Mrs. Mitchell, then let's make it interesting. The boy can go tend to his horse, but you stay here as our guarantee. If he runs away instead of coming back, then you pay the price. Sarah felt a chill of fear, but she nodded. Agreed. But Running Wolf goes free right now and no one follows. Him or tries to hunt him down, Sarah? No. Eleanor Price protested. You can't trust your life to someone you just met. But Running Wolf stepped forward, his young face serious and determined. I will not let this brave woman suffer for my sake. I give sacred oath. I will return in 3 days to speak with your lawman. If I do not return, may the spirits of my ancestors curse me forever. The solemnity of his words impressed even Morrison's men. Native Americans were known to take sacred oaths very seriously. It was not something they would swear lightly. Morrison studied Running Wolf's face for a long moment. He could see the sincerity there, but his pride would not let him back down completely. 3 days, he said finally, if you're not back here. In 3 days, Mrs. Mitchell pays with her life. Dr. Harrison stepped forward. Now wait just a minute, Morrison. You can't threaten to murder a respectable woman over this. The law won't stand for it. The law isn't here, Morrison replied, coldly. And when Sheriff Collins gets back, I'll explain how Mrs. Mitchell helped a dangerous criminal escape. He'll understand that frontier justice sometimes has to move quickly. Sarah could see that Morrison was looking for a way to save face while still getting what he wanted. I'll stay in the jail until Running Wolf returns, she offered. That way, everyone will know I'm not trying to run away from my promise. This suggestion seemed to satisfy more people. Sarah would be safe in the jail, but she would also be showing her good faith by accepting confinement. Running Wolf looked. Stricken, white woman, I cannot let you go to prison because of me. Sarah smiled at him, the first real smile anyone had seen from her that evening. It's only for 3 days, and it's my choice. Focus on helping your horse get better. Morrison's men began untying the ropes around Running Wolf's wrists. The young man rubbed the raw marks where the ropes had cut into his skin. Soon, as he was free, he turned to Sarah. I do not even know your name, he said. Sarah Mitchell, she replied. And I'll be waiting here for you to come back and clear your name. Running Wolf nodded solemnly. Sarah Mitchell. Name forever. In 3 days I will return, and I will bring proof that I am not a thief. What kind of proof? Morrison demanded suspiciously. I cannot say now, but you will see that I speak truth. Running Wolf looked around at all the faces watching him. I thank all people who stood up for stranger. This kindness will not be forgotten. With that, he turned and walked toward the edge of town. The crowd parted to let him pass. Several of Morrison's men started to follow him, but Morrison held up his hand. Let him go. You have his guarantee right here. Looked at Sarah with cold satisfaction. 3 days, Mrs. Mitchell. I hope you're as good a judge of character as you think you are. Sarah watched Running Wolf disappear into the darkness beyond the town's lights. She felt a moment of doubt. She was wrong. About him? What if he was just a clever thief who had fooled her with his sincere manner? But then she remembered the look in his eyes when she had first offended him. It was not the look of a guilty person, but of someone who had been surprised by unexpected kindness. She had made her choice, and she would stand by it. Dr. Harrison approached her as the crowd began to disperse. "Sarah, I'll stay with you in the jail if you want. Someone should keep you company." Sarah appreciated the offer, but she shook her head. "Thank you, doctor, but I'll be fine. I need to think about things, and I do that better alone." Martha Williams hugged her tightly. "I think you're either the bravest woman in the territory or the most foolish. I'm not sure which." "Maybe a little of both," Sarah admitted with a weak smile, as she walked toward the jail. Accompanied by Morrison and 2 of his men, Sarah tried not to think about what would happen if Running Wolf did not return. She had gambled her life on the character of a young man she barely knew. In 3 days, she would find out if her faith had been justified. The jail cell was small and cold, with iron bars that cast long shadows on the stone floor. Sarah sat on the narrow cot and wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders. It had been 12 hours since Running Wolf disappeared into the darkness, and she was beginning to understand the full weight of what she had done. Dr. Harrison had brought her breakfast and stayed to chat for a while. Several other townspeople had also stopped by to see how she was doing. Some thought she was brave, others thought she was foolish, but most seemed to respect her for standing up for her beliefs. Morrison came by twice during the first day, each time asking if she wanted to change her mind about the arrangement. "Not too late to admit you made a mistake," he said during his afternoon visit. "I could send men to track down that savage and we could end this whole mess." But Sarah refused. "I gave my word, just like Running Wolf gave his. I'll wait the full 3 days." What worried Sarah most was not the possibility that Running Wolf might not return, but the possibility that something might happen to prevent him from returning. The frontier was dangerous, with wild animals, hostile tribes, and rough weather. A young man traveling alone with a sick horse faced many risks. On the second day, Eleanor Price brought Sarah some books to help pass the time. "I've been thinking about what you did," the schoolteacher said. "I teach my students about courage and standing up for what's right. But you actually did it when it mattered most." "I just did what felt right," Sarah replied. "Sometimes that's all any of us can do. But what if he doesn't come back? What if something happened to him out there?" Sarah had been asking herself the same question. "Then I'll have to live with the consequences of my choice. But I'd rather take that risk than live knowing I stood by and watched an innocent person get lynched." That evening, Martha Williams brought Sarah dinner and some disturbing news. "Morrison's been talking to people around town," she said quietly. "He's been saying that even if the Indian boy comes back, it doesn't prove anything. He's trying to convince people that you're still a traitor for helping him." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold jail cell. She had hoped that Running Wolf's return would end the matter, but it seemed Morrison was not planning to let it go so easily. "What are people saying?" Sarah asked. "Most folks think Morrison is being unreasonable," Martha replied. "But some are. Listening to him, he's got a lot of influence in this town, and people are scared of losing their jobs or having trouble with his ranch hands." That night, Sarah lay awake thinking about her situation. Even if Running Wolf returned as promised, she might still face serious problems with Morrison and his supporters. She had not just challenged his decision about one Native American boy. She had challenged his authority in the town. Men like Morrison did not forget that kind of defiance. The third day dawned gray and cloudy, with a cold wind that suggested rain was coming. Sarah paced her small cell, watching the door for any sign of Running Wolf's return. She had told herself. She believed in him, but as the hours passed, doubt began to creep into her mind. By midday, a crowd had gathered outside the jail. Word had spread that this was the deadline for Running Wolf's return, and people were curious to see what would happen. Morrison arrived with several of his men, all of them armed and ready for trouble. "Well, Mrs. Mitchell," Morrison called through the bars, "your Indian friend has until sunset to show up. After that, we settle this matter permanently." Sarah tried to keep her voice steady. "There's still several hours left in the day. He'll come." But as the afternoon wore on, Sarah's confidence began to waver. What if Running Wolf had decided that his promise was not worth dying for? What if his sick horse had died, or he had gotten lost, or been attacked by wild animals? What if she had been completely wrong about his character? The crowd outside grew. larger as word spread through the town. Some people were hoping Running Wolf would return to vindicate Sarah's faith in him. Others seemed to be waiting for the spectacle of what would happen if he did not. Dr. Harrison pushed through the crowd and approached the jail cell. "Sarah, it's not too late to end this. Morrison might be willing to accept an apology and let this whole thing drop." But Sarah shook her head firmly. "No, doctor. I made a promise, and I'm going to keep it, whatever happens." The sun was getting lower in the sky when Eleanor Price came running to the jail, her face flushed with excitement. "Sarah, there's something you need to see." Through the small window of her cell, Sarah could see Eleanor pointing toward the eastern edge of town. In the distance, a small group of riders was approaching. They were still too far away to make out clearly, but Sarah's heart began to race with hope. Morrison saw them too, and his expression grew grim. "Looks like your savage friend brought some company. This could be the raiding party I was worried about." But as the riders came closer, it became clear that this was not a war party. There were only 4 of them, and they were approaching slowly and peacefully. One of them was clearly Running Wolf, riding a horse that looked much healthier than he had left. The crowd pressed closer to get a better look at the approaching riders. Sarah could see that Running Wolf was accompanied by 3 older Native American men, all of them dressed in what appeared to be ceremonial clothing. They rode with dignity and purpose, showing no signs of hostility or aggression. Morrison stepped forward as the riders reached the edge of the crowd. "That's far enough," he shouted. "State your business here." Running Wolf dismounted from his horse and walked forward until he was just a few feet from Morrison. Looked older somehow, more serious and mature than he had 3 days ago. Time alone in the wilderness seemed to have changed him. "I have returned as I promised," Running Wolf said in clear, strong English. "I have brought my uncle and 2 elders of my tribe to speak for me." One of the older men dismounted and approached Morrison. He was tall and dignified, with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. When he spoke, his English was perfect and cultured, surprising many in the crowd. "I am Chief Standing Bear," he said formally. "Running Wolf is my nephew, and he has told me of the kindness shown by the woman called Sarah Mitchell. We have come to clear his name and to honor her courage." Morrison looked confused and frustrated. This was not what he had expected. "And don't care who you are. The boy was caught trespassing on my land, and that makes him a criminal." Chief Standing Bear nodded calmly. "Running Wolf has told me of these accusations. We have brought proof of his innocence, and also information that you will find very important." He gestured to the 3rd Native American, who was leading a pack horse loaded with supplies. The man unpacked several items and laid them on the ground where everyone could see them. 3 nights ago, while Running Wolf was caring for his sick horse near your town, we captured 2 white men who were stealing horses from various ranches in this area," Chief Standing Bear explained. "These are some of the stolen items we recovered from them." Sarah pressed her face against the bars of her cell, trying to see what was being displayed. She could make out several saddles, bridles, and other equipment that looked like they bore different ranch brands. Morrison stepped closer to examine the recovered goods, and his face went pale. "That's my saddle," he said slowly. "And that bridle belongs to the Murphy Ranch. These items were stolen from us weeks ago." Chief Standing Bear nodded. "The real horse thieves have been caught and turned over to the territorial marshal." Running Wolf was never involved in any theft. He was exactly where he said he was, caring for a sick animal. The crowd murmured with surprise and excitement. Running Wolf had not only returned as promised, but he had brought proof of his innocence and helped solve a real crime problem that had been plaguing the area for months. Morrison stared at the recovered stolen goods in disbelief. His certainty about Running Wolf's guilt was crumbling before his eyes, and with it his justification for everything that had happened over the past 3 days. Chief Standing Bear continued, speaking to the crowd, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to leadership. "The 2 thieves we captured confessed to stealing horses from many ranches in this area. They had been operating for several months, always careful, to make it look like the work of Native Americans so that suspicion would fall on our people instead of them." Running Wolf stepped forward, addressing Morrison directly. "The night you found me, I was getting water for my horse from your trough. I saw 2 white men near your corral, but they ran when they heard your men coming. You found me instead of them, and you believed what you wanted to believe. The crowd was buzzing with excitement and anger. People were realizing that they had almost participated in lynching an innocent young man, while the real criminals remained free to continue their crimes. Dr. Harrison pushed through the crowd to the jail cell. Morrison, you need to release Mrs. Mitchell immediately. It's clear that she was right about the boy's innocence. But Morrison was not ready to admit his mistake so easily. His face was red with embarrassment and anger. Even if the boy wasn't stealing horses that night, he was still trespassing on my property. And Mrs. Mitchell still interfered with law enforcement. Chief Standing Bear's eyes flashed with controlled anger. Law enforcement? You mean a lynch? Mob? There is a difference between justice and revenge, and what you planned was revenge. One of the other tribal elders spoke for the first time. His English was heavily accented, but his meaning was clear. In our tribe, we have heard stories of the white woman who stood against many men to protect one of our young ones. This is a deed that will be remembered for generations. Sarah felt tears coming to her eyes as she listened from inside her cell. She had made her choice based on what felt right at the moment, never thinking about how it might be remembered, or what it might mean to Running Wolf's people. Martha Williams called out from the crowd. Morrison, you've been proven wrong. Let Sarah out of that jail right now. Several other voices joined in, demanding Sarah's release. The mood of the crowd had shifted completely. Instead of supporting Morrison's actions, they were now angry at him for nearly causing a terrible injustice. Morrison looked around at all the hostile faces surrounding him. His own men were backing away, unwilling to continue supporting him now that the truth had been revealed. He realized that his position in the community had been seriously damaged by his stubborn pursuit of Running Wolf. Fine, Morrison said grudgingly. Mrs. Mitchell can go free. But this doesn't change the fact that she showed disloyalty to her own people by siding with an Indian against whites. Chief Standing Bear's voice became cold and dangerous. Mrs. Mitchell showed loyalty to justice and truth. Those are values that belong to all people, not just one race. Any man who cannot see that is not worthy of respect. Running Wolf walked to the jail cell where Sarah waited. Sarah Mitchell, he said formally, my people wish to honor you for your courage and kindness. You risked your life for a stranger, and that is the mark of a truly noble heart. Sarah felt overwhelmed by the praise, but also deeply moved. Just did what felt right, Running Wolf. I'm glad you kept your promise and came back. I told you I would return, and I always keep my word, Running Wolf replied. But I brought more than just proof of my innocence. I brought my family to meet the woman who showed such faith in me. As Morrison reluctantly unlocked the jail cell, Chief Standing Bear approached Sarah. Mrs. Mitchell, my nephew has told me much about you during our journey here. He says you have great courage and wisdom, and that you treated him with respect, when others showed only hatred. Sarah stepped out of the cell, grateful to be free, but still overwhelmed by everything that was happening. Chief Standing Bear, I appreciate your kind words, but I don't deserve such praise. Anyone with a good heart would have done the same thing. The chief smiled, the first time his serious expression had softened. You say that because you have a good heart yourself, but we both know that many people in that crowd 3 nights ago could have spoken up, and only a few chose to do so. You were the first and the bravest. Running Wolf stepped closer to Sarah, his young face serious with emotion. Sarah Mitchell, I want to give you something. He reached into a leather pouch at his side and pulled out a small object wrapped in soft deerskin. You don't need to give me anything, Sarah protested. I'm just happy that everything worked out well. But Running Wolf insisted, carefully unwrapping the object to reveal a beautiful necklace made of turquoise stones and silver. This belonged to my grandmother. She was known throughout our tribe for her wisdom and courage. My uncle says you have shown the same qualities. Sarah was deeply moved by the gesture. The necklace was clearly valuable, not just in terms of materials, but in terms of family history and meaning. Running Wolf, this is too precious. I can't accept something that belonged to your grandmother. Chief Standing Bear spoke up.
Mrs.
Mitchell, refusing this gift would be an insult to my nephew and to our family. You have earned the right to wear that necklace through your actions. With trembling hands, Sarah accepted the necklace. As she held it, she could feel the weight of the honor being bestowed upon her. I don't know what to say. I think he seems too small for such a generous gift. The third elder, who had been silent until now, stepped forward and spoke to Chief Standing Bear in their native language. The chief nodded and then turned back to Sarah. Elder Whitehawk says that our tribe would like to invite you to visit our village. We want our people to meet the white woman who showed such courage and honor. Sarah was surprised by the invitation. Few white settlers had ever been welcomed into Native American villages. I would be honored to visit your people, but I don't want to cause any problems. There would be no problems, Chief Standing Bear assured her. Our tribe believes in judging people by their actions, not by the color of their skin. Morrison, who had been listening to this exchange with growing anger, finally exploded. You're treating this woman like some kind of hero for helping an Indian against her own kind. The crowd stirred angrily at Morrison's words. Even people who might have agreed with him 3 days ago were now offended by his continued hostility. Running Wolf's eyes flashed with anger at the insult to his people. But Chief Standing Bear placed a restraining hand on his nephew's arm. Mr. Morrison, I understand that you are angry and embarrassed by what has happened, but continuing to insult my people will not change the facts. You were wrong about my nephew. Dr. Harrison stepped forward, his face red with anger. Morrison, you've done enough damage. Why don't you just take your men and go home? But Morrison was not finished. His pride had been wounded too deeply for him to simply walk away.
Ace.
Isn't over, he said, looking directly at Sarah. You've shown your true colors, Mrs. Mitchell, with that threat hanging in the air. Morrison turned and stalked away, followed by his remaining supporters. But Sarah noticed that several of his men stayed behind. As Morrison disappeared, the tension in the crowd began to ease. People started to approach Sarah and the Native American visitors, curious to learn more about what had happened. Eleanor Price was the first to reach Sarah. I'm so proud of you, the schoolteacher said, hugging her friend tightly. You showed all of us what real courage looks like. Martha Williams joined them, her eyes bright with tears. Sarah, I was so scared for you these past 3 days. I was scared too, Sarah admitted. But I knew in my heart that Running Wolf was a good person. Sometimes you just have to trust your instincts. Running Wolf had been talking quietly with his uncle and the elders, but now he approached Sarah again. Sarah Mitchell, there is one more thing I must tell you. My brother wishes to meet you. Your brother? Sarah asked, curious about this new development. Chief Standing Bear nodded. Running Wolf's older brother is one of our finest warriors. His name is Swift Arrow, and he has asked permission to come and pay his respects to you personally. Sarah felt overwhelmed by all the attention and honors being offered to her. I appreciate the thought, but really I just did what anyone should do. But Running Wolf shook his head earnestly. You do not understand, Sarah Mitchell. What you did was not ordinary. You risked your life for someone you did not know. As the afternoon wore on, more and more townspeople came to congratulate Sarah and meet the Native American visitors. The atmosphere became almost festive. Sarah found herself deeply moved by the conversations she had with Chief Standing Bear and the elders. They spoke about their people's history and their struggles with white settlers. 3 weeks after Running Wolf's vindication, life in Cedar Ridge had changed for Sarah. Some townspeople respected her courage in defending the young Apache, while others viewed her with suspicion. Her general store lost some customers, but gained others ranchers grateful that her actions helped expose the real livestock thieves. On a cool autumn morning, Sarah spotted Native American riders approaching her store. Running Wolf sat among them, transformed more confident and mature than the frightened youth she'd defended. Beside him rode a powerfully built man who could only be his older brother. Sarah Mitchell, Running Wolf said warmly, this is Swift Arrow, finest warrior of our tribe. Swift Arrow was tall and imposing, with intelligent dark eyes and eagle feathers marking his warrior status. To Sarah's shock, he slowly knelt before her, bowing his head in deep respect. Please stand up, Sarah said, embarrassed. There's no need for this. Swift Arrow remained kneeling as he spoke in accented but clear English. What you did for my younger brother cannot be repaid with words or gifts. You stood against angry men to protect one of our people, risking your life for someone you didn't know. This is true warrior behavior, and I show you the respect warriors deserve," Running Wolf explained. "In our culture, warriors bow only to other proven warriors. By defending me against the mob, you fought a battle without weapons, using only courage and honor. Swift Arrow recognizes you as a fellow warrior." Moved to tears, Sarah asked him to stand. Swift Arrow rose gracefully, revealing a face that showed both strength and gentleness. When he smiled, his imposing demeanor became warm and welcoming. "My brother told me you have great courage and a kind heart," Swift Arrow said. "Now I see he spoke truly." Inside her store, Swift Arrow revealed he was a war chief responsible for protecting his tribe and deciding when to fight or seek peace. "Your actions make my job easier because they show our young men that not all white people are enemies." He spoke wisely about the conflicts between settlers and Native Americans. Many warriors want to strike back at white settlements because they've seen cruelty and injustice. But hatred only breeds more hatred. People like you give them hope that peace might be possible. As they talked, Sarah found herself drawn to Swift Arrow's intelligence and gentle strength. He was unlike any man she'd met, combining physical power with emotional depth and wisdom. "Do you think our peoples can ever live together peacefully?" Sarah asked. "I believe it's possible," Swift Arrow replied thoughtfully. "But it requires good people on both sides to build bridges of understanding. People like you who see past the surface to the person underneath." Running Wolf eagerly prompted his brother to share his idea. Swift Arrow, slightly embarrassed, suggested Sarah serve as a liaison between their peoples, someone both sides trusted who could help prevent misunderstandings that led to violence. Sarah was intrigued but worried about her limited influence. "Some people still see me as a traitor for helping Running Wolf, but others see you as a hero," Running Wolf pointed out. "You've earned trust on both sides." Their conversation was interrupted by approaching horses. Through her window, Sarah saw Jake Morrison and his men riding toward the store. Her heart sank. Morrison was the man who'd wanted to lynch Running Wolf and remained bitter about what had happened. Swift Arrow noticed Sarah's alarm and followed her gaze. Seeing the approaching riders, he became instantly alert and ready for danger. "Jake Morrison," Sarah explained quietly. "He wanted to lynch Running Wolf and won't like finding you here." Swift Arrow's hand moved toward his weapons, but Sarah placed her hand on his arm. "Please don't. Violence will only make things worse." Morrison dismounted with his men, his face showing anger and suspicion at seeing the Native American horses. "Mrs. Mitchell," he called loudly, "I want to talk to you." Sarah stepped onto her porch, positioning herself between Morrison and her guests. "What do you want, Morrison?" "I want to know why you're entertaining savages in your store," Morrison said angrily. "Haven't you caused enough trouble already?" Swift Arrow appeared in the doorway, his presence immediately changing the confrontation's dynamic. Morrison's men shifted nervously, recognizing this was no ordinary Native American. About Swift Arrow radiated power and competence. "These are my guests," Sarah said firmly, "and they're welcome any time." Morrison's face reddened. "Your guests? You're openly consorting with the enemy now? What's next, Sarah? You going to marry one of them?" The crude suggestion hung in the air like a slap. Before Sarah could respond, Swift Arrow stepped forward. "You will speak respectfully to this woman," Swift Arrow said quietly, but with unmistakable authority. "She has shown more honor in one day than you have in your entire life." Hand moved toward his gun, but hesitated at Swift Arrow's calm confidence. This was clearly a man who'd faced death many times and wasn't intimidated by threats. "Who are you to tell me how to talk?" Morrison snarled. "You're nothing but a savage who doesn't belong in civilized society." Swift Arrow's voice remained calm, but his eyes became cold as winter. "I am Swift Arrow, war chief of the Apache. I have come to honor the woman who saved my brother's life. If you continue to insult her, you will answer to me." The tension was thick enough to cut. Morrison's men looked nervous, clearly recognizing they faced someone far more dangerous than expected. Morrison himself seemed to realize he'd overplayed his hand, but Sarah could see the situation was about to explode into violence. She knew she had to act quickly. What happened next would change everything. It's not just for her, but for the future of peace between the two peoples Swift Arrow had spoken about.